Welcome back to the realm of Final Fantasy XIV. It's been a little while, but Shadowbringers is out and I've found myself actually enthusiastic about doing the content. So I'm bringing her back, but I don't want to burn myself out, so I'm not going to hold myself to doing every little thing that needs to be done. I'll get to stuff when I feel like getting to stuff. Maybe it'll be kinda late. But with that said, let's dive into one of the two Extreme Primals released in patch 5.0. Or was it 5.01? Are they even really Primals? Once you're in the arena, there's actually a surprising amount of prep work that you need to do before things get going, but don't worry, this is a pretty easy fight. First, you need to decide if the DPS are going north or south. The party leader will probably have this set up before you even join. A lot of groups seem to prefer DPS going south, but the group we're in here decided DPS should go north because it gives us just a little bit more time on the boss later on. Next up, everybody needs to choose a cardinal direction. North, northeast, east, southeast, etc. Usually the main tank will grab north, ranged DPS and healers should grab the intercardinals, northeast, southeast, etc. I am going northeast. Something else to set up before the fight is numbers. A tank will usually get number 1 if the other tank is feeling especially randy or has the abilities to navigate the attacks. They may also get number 2, and then the DPS typically take 3 and up. Here, our main tank is not going to be taking a number, but our off tank, because of their invincibility cooldown, can take 2. This leaves 4 numbers for the rest of the DPS, so all of the DPS get a number, with the off tank getting 1 and the rest of us 2 through 5. This will make a little more sense later. And lastly, everybody needs to choose a side, left or right. One healer needs to go left, one healer needs to go right. Otherwise, just split the two groups evenly. Here, I'm going to be going right. That may be a lot to keep in your head, but don't worry, we'll get to those as we get to them in the fight itself. As usual, first thing that should happen is the tank grabs the boss and points them away from the rest of the party. And in standard fashion, we're going to be introduced to a lot of mechanics we're going to be seeing later on in the fight, introduced one at a time. Titania's first move, Titania, is Bright Sabbath, which is just raid damage. This is followed by Phantom Rune. Now you're going to have to pay attention to the arena for this one because Phantom Rune can do one of two things. The very first time Titania uses it, it will always be the same, but it will be randomized later on. You'll see the arena flash purple and otherwise no markers show up. This means get away from them, as an AoE is going to be hitting the ground near them. Next up is Mist Rune. Now remember which cardinal direction you called earlier and get to that location. So I'm going to be running northeast. You'll see circles appear on the ground and little purple spheres tick around it. You need to be in that circle when the spheres finish ticking. If you don't, an ad spawns. And at least at this point, if an ad spawns, it's going to make it way harder to get enough damage in before they enrage. And while you're rushing back, you'll see Flame Rune begin casting. Now at this point, remember which direction you called, left or right. I called right, so I'm getting on the east side of them. We put a marker on the ground, but you can just stand in the water circle. 2 gather AoEs are going to go out, one on each of the 2 healers. And when the attack hits, everyone is going to take a lot of fire damage, which can be mitigated by the water circle you're standing in. Next up is Divination Rune, which is a bit of a tank buster, but it's a conal AoE, so make sure nobody is standing in front of Titania. quickly followed by Chain of Brambles. At this point, remember what I mentioned before. DPS north, everybody else south. So you want to stand in Titania's hitbox when this cast finishes going off. And then as soon as it's finished, you run in your assigned direction. For DPS, it's north. Now, to make it easy enough to get enough distance in and to deal with later mechanics, if you go north, you go northwest. So here, since we're going up, you'll see me running northwest. And you'll see my partner did not, in fact, run southeast like everybody else, so we took an extra couple ticks from the Thorny Vine. If you don't break the bramble quickly, you will just die outright. Another cast of Phantom Rune, but this time you will not see the arena flash purple. Instead, you'll see a yellow circle appear at Titania's feet. This is going to be a donut AoE. You have to be in this small circle, or you will get hit. Those are the two different kinds of Phantom Rune that you'll see, so you just have to pay attention to the tell. If you look for it, Titania's animation also changes, but personally I find it easier to just look at the whole arena, to see whether you're going in or out. Midsummer Night's Dream doesn't actually do any damage, or much anything at all as far as we're concerned, so just keep doing damage. It's simply going to change the arena. You don't immediately see a cast for this, but when you see Titania say, "This may tingle a little bit," prepare your numbers. Titania is going to tether one of the players, and whoever's tethered is about to get hit by a very unpleasant AoE. Whoever's numbered 1, usually the off-tank, is going to have to grab the tether from that player and run off to one side, so nobody else gets hit by the AoE. This AoE is going to hit 6 times total, so with the off-tank's invincibility cooldown, they take the first 2 hits. And then whoever's numbered 2 needs to run in and take the tether from the tank, or the 3rd hit will kill them. With number 2 having taken a hit, number 3 needs to quickly run in and take the tether, so number 3 gets hit instead of number 2 getting hit again. Because without an invincibility cooldown, 2 hits will kill you. 3 gets hit and 4 runs in. 4 gets hit, and I was numbered 5, so I'm going to run in to take the final hit. Once everybody's grouped back together, Titania will use Fey Light, which is a tank buster that typically both tanks share. However, the off-tank is still feeling a little woozy, and the main tank still has his invincibility cooldown, so he can use that to eat the entire thing himself. Going to introduce a new mechanic now, Growth Rune, which is going to be combined with Chain of Brambles. This is important because you handle this much like you handled Chain of Brambles. You run under Titania, and wait for Chain of Brambles to finish casting. As soon as it does, DPS up, everybody else down. However, you'll notice there's an AoE in the upper left-hand corner of the room, and that's actually a lot of directional AoEs. So that's going to be hitting horizontally, vertically, and diagonally. You don't want to go towards that, obviously, so when you're going up, you go northeast. You go to the corner that doesn't have the AoE. This should break the chain, and then be sure to get out of the corner so the growing vines don't hit you. Some gap closers can cross over the vines, but being a ranged character, I don't need to worry about it. Regardless, they go away shortly enough, and then everybody can get back to the center for Divination Rune, which once again is a large diagonal AoE on the tank. Frost Rune will look familiar. Anybody who remembers the Shiva fight. And it's dodged in exactly the same way, though we're not going to be dodging it. We're all crowding around the center, and we're just going to eat the damage from it so we can continue DPSing on Titania. If you were going to dodge it though, the first circle will always appear in the middle, and then one along the outside ring around it. Pay attention to which direction the circles go, and stand where the circle would be on the other side of the second circle. This is effectively where the very last circle is going to spawn. So you wait in this open spot until the first AoE goes away, and then you can run back into the middle before that last AoE makes its way around to you. Next up comes Uplift, which is an AoE marker on every single character. Ideally, you would want everybody to split up and go back to their cardinal directions. This ensures none of these are overlapping and nobody gets hit. Oftentimes this proves harder to actually do in practice, mostly because people don't seem to think quickly enough. Phantom Rune once again. You can see the circle AoE around Titania, so make sure to gather in close. This is going to be the donut. And then Titania floats away, becoming invulnerable as 3 adds spawn. Mustard Seed, Peace Blossom, and Puck. So we start with Mustard Seed and go counterclockwise. And each one of these adds uses its own attacks. So you have to be prepared as we go. One of the first things you're going to see is a lot of circle AoEs centered on each player. So make sure you're spread out going into the start of this. You'll also see a few conal and directional AoEs, so just keep your eyes open. As long as you're spread out, it's not hard to dodge. With Mustard Seed down, we move our way over to Puck. Mustard Seed does not have a tank buster or an auto attack, so you don't need a tank on him, but you will need one on Puck and Peace Blossom. Puck does have a kind of tank buster called Pummel, so whoever's tanking it will take a beating. Once the last one is down, you'll note the gauge is surprisingly empty. You have a few moments. If you have any charge abilities, like Meditate or Improvisation, now would be a good time to use them, because you've got a good 15-20 seconds before the next phase begins. Just like before, we start with Mustard Seed and work our way counterclockwise. And just like before, we're going to be starting off with a lot of conal AoEs, directional AoEs, and very large circular AoEs centered on each player. Because these are so large, you especially want to spread out at the start of this phase. I make my way to the farthest southeast corner because nobody ever goes down here. This is followed by a Gather AoE, and shortly after that, hopefully Mustard Seed goes down and you can move over to Puck. Now the big thing you're going to have to worry about with Puck now is the vines and their AoEs, and the stomp that's going to be happening in the center of the arena. Simultaneously with this is going to be another Chain of Brambles. So because it's Chain of Brambles, that's DPS north, everybody else south. And of course you want the corner that the vines are not going to hit, so you can wait until you see their AoEs appear to know which direction to go in. The punch is actually going to knock you back, so stand near your corner, but as close to that circle as you can. Being knocked back should break the chain, and despite all the conal AoEs being very scary, you actually have a fair amount of time to get to an open spot. Don't spread out too far though, as we will be seeing another Gather AoE and 2 very large centered AoEs. The 2 people targeted by the large AoEs, of course, need to get away from everyone else, while everyone remaining needs to get into the Gather AoE. And that is Puck downed, which leaves only Peace Blossom. We defeated him before it happened, but the last thing to be aware of there is, once again, every player will be targeted with an AoE, so you need to spread out. So spreading out preemptively is helpful. Back to the center for Titania's ultimate. Now's a good time to shield and heal. Back to the fight at hand, and that brings us into the final phase of the fight. You're not going to see much in the way of new mechanics at this point, mostly the same mechanics used in slightly different ways. We're going to start with Mist Rune, but don't run to your corner just yet, because Titania is going to follow very quickly with Phantom Rune. We can see the yellow ring, so make sure to stay close to Titania for Phantom Rune to go off. And then as soon as it does, run to your spot. And then just like before, this is going to be followed by Flame Rune, so get to left or right, depending. Only we're also going to be seeing Growth Rune happen at the same time. Now, Growth Rune can appear in one of 2 spots. It can either appear at the north and south side of the arena, or the east and west side of the arena. This time it appeared north and south, so we don't have to do anything, and we'll dodge the AoE. But had it appeared east and west, it's very typical to rotate clockwise. So our group of 4 would be moving to the south water puddle, while the other group of 4 would be moving to the north water puddle. Phantom Rune again. At this point, which Phantom Rune is used is going to be random. The first 1 or 2 were always in that order to help you learn them. But at this point you have to pay attention to the tells. I saw the purple, so I got away. Bright Sabbath is the raid damage that happened early on in the fight. Fey Light is going to be the multi-hit tank buster once again. And this is followed by Frost Rune, just so we saw it before. Nothing fancy about it. Normally you would follow the circles around to try not to get hit by them, but here we're just going to eat the center one and heal through it. Spread apart for uplift. Bright Sabbath is more raid damage. The tether appears again, so remember your numbers. We're using the same strategy as before, where number 1 uses their invincibility move to eat 2, and then number 2 comes in to take the tether from 1, and so on. Growth Rune followed by Chain of Brambles again. This time the AoE appeared in the upper right, so after Chain of Brambles is cast, we're running to the northwest. Phantom Loom again. We can see the circle, so we get in for the donut. Followed by another Phantom Rune. This time I see the purple, so we get out. And that is the fight. I think there are a few more moves after that, but not too terribly many, before Titania uses a Bright Sabbath that just wipes the party. That would be the Enrage. Had a lot of fun with this fight, though, and while I have not yet done Innocence, I feel like it's going to be a good time. Until next time, everyone.